Chair, just to make sure your laptop's.
I've just turned you. I'm on headphones. So
I have the same problem. It's very faint from the chambers.
Yeah, same here.
So it's a general thing on the. So you're going to have to strain our hearing online. I would say that I'm having works done here. I've got headphones on. Somebody might be bashing a bit behind me. I was not much to the cross-cutting resources and business scrutiny committee. We've got a double bill today. I haven't said it. That does say it in my script, but I just thought I'd say that at any rate to keep everybody. I'm just getting onto the script at the moment because I've got the wrong thing here. Right, item number 1, welcomes and attendances, it says on my script here, very ably written by Rebecca. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the Cross-Cutting Resources and Business Overall and Scrutiny Committee. That is a mouthful, which is open to the press and public. So just remember that you are in view. This meeting is viewed live for members of the press and public. Therefore, welcome anybody that might be watching remotely. Good afternoon, everybody. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members refrain from using the chat function, instead use the raised hand icon when you want to speak, and obviously in the chamber people just do the usual thing there. I'll remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you'll please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Obviously, if you're going to go off and go elsewhere for other things you need to do, then we understand that. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Right, item number 1 on the agenda. Niall, do we have any apologies for this afternoon's meeting?
Yeah, afternoon, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Carl Gordon, Councillors Elizabeth Haynes, Caroline Price, Chris Tew, and Councillor Lucy Williams.
Is there any way we can get that volume up? We really are missing you.
Apologies, Chair, but our volume's on maximum on the system.
You're getting even fainter.
Apologies, Chair, but the microphones are on maximum on the system from the chamber.
I can hear you now. It's brilliant. That suddenly something went there. So can we have that one again repeated, if we may, please, of whose apologies?
Yeah, hopefully this is better for you, Chair.
Oh, that's much better.
So we have apologies from Councillors Carl Gordon, Elizabeth Haynes, Caroline Price, Chris Tew, Jane Hopkins, and Lucy Williams.
Thank you very much indeed. I could hear that. Anybody else got any that they know of?
Yes, Chair, if I could I give apologies for Alfie Best and for Nick Byrne, and also in advance apologies for myself. I've got to go at 3 o'clock.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing that. And okay.
And myself, Chair, please. Charles Davis has contacted me. He's unavailable as well. Thank you.
Right, so it's going to be a fairly quiet meeting today, but we've got a lot of officers here. I know that. Hello, officers. Thank you very much for all you coming as well. So, okay, next item on the agenda, item number 2, declarations of interest. Rebecca, can you take us through the declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, members, you're considering the budget report and the county plan delivery report today. I'm not aware of any declarations, but if you do have them, if you could verbally declare them now or as they may arise during discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I just note that
Sorry,
if they
Chair,
come up...
Councillor Evans would like to come in, please.
Councillor Evans?
I got a declaration of interest in you and that, because it's quite loud here.
Go on then.
I set I'm the chair of the finances for South Wales Fire and Rescue to set the budget. That's mentioned in the report. I'm also on the CREM. So just to make sure that they're in the report. But the main one is the fire one where I said the levy. All right.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else feel that they're in a situation like this where they need to declare something or another?
Councillor Seaborn, Chair.
Rose?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a trustee on a couple of third sector organisations. I don't think they're mentioned by name in the report, but if they are undiscussed, I will declare. Thank you.
You can have it either way. You being discussed is a general thing, or you can declare. A couple there have decided to go that way. I mean, I'm in a similar situation, but I do take the view that it's discussing generally, not the other way around. It's up to you anyway to be safe, or you know, to view it that way or the other way. Thank you very much indeed. Item number 3 on our agenda is
Councillor Williams, please.
Councillor David Williams.
Yes, Chair, just to declare an interest as Vice Chair of TVA.
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Anybody else before we move on?
Yes, Chair, it's Janet. I'm also trustee of some organisations within Glenavon, so I declared an interest, even though they may not come up. They're third sector issues. Okay.
I think I must do this as well because community
councils. Chair, if I can just come in quickly, rather than everyone declaring on the off chance.
Go on then. Please stop this if you would.
Yeah, if you just declare them, if they do come up as part of discussions, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
I think that's what we tried to say in the first place. If they come up specifically, declare them then, rather than. Linda, I noticed you've got your hand up.
No hands down, thank you, Chair.
Can you take it down, please?
Apologies, sticky controls.
I know, we all got that. Anyway, thank you there. Right, item number 3, confirmation of the meeting minutes of the 6th, 12th, 23. Have you all read that? I hope you have. Can we, any matters arising, anybody notices? It was the equality meeting. It was a good meeting. I think everybody that was there got a lot of meaning out of it. Can we have a proposer and a seconder on that one?
I'll move the minutes, Chair.
And
second, Chair.
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed.
I'll second them.
Right. There is, as far as I can see, nothing on the action sheet. Rebecca, can you take us through that? So I did preempt you on that one.
Yes, thank you. The recommendations from the last meeting are just being finalised and should be back with the committee within the next day or so.
I stopped myself there, didn't I? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the first, the actual meat of the action today is the financial planning, and it says on my sheet, what does it say? The report, we go on to financial planning 24-25. The report provides an update on the Welsh Government's provisional local government settlement announcement as it affects the council and the impact this has had on the initial estimate position. Also advises the committee of the proposed mitigations to address the anticipated funding gap. Can I firstly welcome all the officers and the executive member for resources to the meeting, and now hand over to Councillor Morgan and Nigel Rees to introduce the report.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in quickly just to remind members of the structure of how we're running the meeting today?
Thank you. I thought you'd do that.
Yeah, sorry. So just to remind members, as per my email yesterday, obviously you're considering 2 reports today. So that it's proposed you consider item 5 first, and then make your following your questions, make recommendations with officers and the exec member present. We'll then take a 5-minute break. You'll come back, consider item 6, again make recommendations when officers and exec members are present. And then once you've finished those recommendations, they'll be invited to leave. You will still have the opportunity at the end to make any other recommendations or comments that you wish. So just bear that in mind throughout discussions. Thank you.
Can I just ask members that they've got the format for this, because it's slightly different to the usual one. So you've got the finance budget report, officers in, make recommendations, and obviously ask them questions if there's anything there that you think needs asking questions about. Then we make the recommendations of officers in the room. Then we go on to the planning. That's the general gist of what's here. It's in the agenda there, but that's the structure of this meeting. So please, Sue Morgan and Nigel, if you could give your contribution, and then we'll go straight into it. What we will also do is, if we go through page, I think Rebecca suggested that's how we do it. But then get an idea. Nigel will take us through this quite well. He normally does. Okay, Sue, if you want to do your bit.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much to the Scrutiny Committee for having us here today to present this Financial Planning 24-25 report. I'm not going to take very long over this. This is your opportunity as a Scrutiny Committee to review the report and ask questions of officers and myself, if that's of any help to you. But I just want to briefly say the key messages of the report are broadly positive, but it's in the context of a settlement which, while it provides a small uplift over the levels that we assumed would be coming from Welsh Government in our draft estimates, is not going to be sufficient to meet the considerable pressures that we, like all other local authorities, are facing. That said, the authority is moving with real purpose and expertise towards a balanced position for 24-25. Again, a position that will probably be the envy of many local authorities, sadly. The mitigations have had to be thorough to ensure that we are able to achieve that balanced position. Has not been easy, and I really commend the officers for their efforts in this regard, and again thank members for their measured, considered approach to budget setting in previous years, and the sensible decisions that have laid the groundwork for this position. The minimal service impact is the most important message in this report, I think. The ability to protect, particularly frontline services, is very precious in these times, and we do genuinely appreciate the input of this committee in previous years and on this budget. We're wide open to questioning and to probing and scrutiny on this report. The more thoroughly it's examined and prepared, the better it is for the people of Torfaen. Officers and myself have just briefly discussed the fact, and the committee may also have had a chance to look at just a summary of the survey responses. And I just want to thank, if we've got any members of the public listening into this meeting, all those who contributed to the budget consultation online. It's heartening to see how sensible many of the comments and input was. And while nobody appreciates increased council tax levels, nonetheless there are many of our residents who completed the survey who do understand that context well and have shown that in their responses. So yes, I'll hand over to Nigel now, who will be able to give a more detailed summary of the report.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. I'll canter through the report because, as you say, Chair, you've got two items today, and we want to allow plenty of time for questions. So the first part of the report that's got any substantive comment in it is Section 5, which is the provisional settlement for 24-25, and I'm sure all members are aware now that in terms of all Wales, the uplift was 3.1%, and ours was just marginally over it. 3.24%. We planned on 3.1%, so we were in a good position in relation to the settlement. We did receive some All Wales grant figures, and some were still missing. There's likely to be, or there's going to be, a grant rationalisation programme within education, which we need to see the details of and work through that. But critically, grants are going to be coming now direct to local authorities as opposed to being local authorities and consortia. I do refer in the report to two areas of grant reduction. One, the social care workforce grant, and a couple of homelessness grants were reduced. Since the settlement came out, Welsh Government have clarified on the homeless ones that they should have been noted as to be confirmed rather than reduced at this stage. So we'll have to wait for the final settlement on those. So that was largely it in terms of the provisional settlement. They did announce as well around the same time that the unit cost for free school meals, the universal free school meals, was going up slightly, and that's referred to. Then in terms of 6, that basically just reminds scrutiny where we were when we last came in November, and then the work that has happened since that date to try to mitigate the gap that was there at the time of 2.8. Obviously, as we're constantly reviewing and refining and receiving information, as well as things going our way and going down, so some things go the other way. So in 7.1, there's a table there of additional pressures that we've had to factor in, and they're listed there. So then, as we move into Section 8, we bring all that together, and as we sit here at the moment, with the mitigations before you, with the provisional settlement, with the assumptions around council tax, we're in a position of around just £70,000 short at the moment, which within the context of our revenue budget is, it's virtually balanced, and it will be balanced by the time we report to Cabinet in February. There's a section there on risks. All budgets contain risks, and they're listed there for members. And obviously, then there's what happens after this. We'll go to Cabinet with the revised MTFP and the final proposals. We'll get the final government. The final Welsh Government budget is on the 27th of February, as is our final settlement, and obviously Council is on the 27th of February as well. The key appendix for you, they're all key appendices, but in Appendix 1 you've got the full list of mitigations that have been developed across the Council to bring about a balanced budget. We have benefited from the fact that we started the budget almost this time last year off the back of the medium-term financial plan, and certainly that first block in Appendix 1, we spent a lot of time in the early part developing that, which has allowed us to put a set of budget proposals before members that they're challenging to achieve, but really contain minimal service impacts, and they're manageable. And I think it's overall a relatively good budget within the confines of an uplift of only 3.1%, which is below inflation and below our pressures. But we've got to, I think we've got to a reasonable position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel, and thank you, Sue, before you. What we suggested as the scrutiny activity is to invite it to, it's on 11 here, and it's obviously before you happen to both of these questions. Members are invited to examine the contents of this report and supporting papers and make comments, recommendations or alternative proposals for consideration by the Executive. And what I like to do is firstly welcome all the officers. There's far too many for me to list, unfortunately, and the Executive member. Well, I've done that already. Thank you for the summary, and I may open the meeting to members' question. We're going to do a general question, so if you want to look at what Sue and Nigel have talked about already, which is in the document, or you want to look at mitigations, we can go through that. So it's over to you now. It's your scrutiny session, not mine. And it's up to you what line of question you want to take. We're leaving it very open, this one. There we are.
Councillor Evans, Chair.
I've got a couple. What are we going to do if we got any slippage with finances carrying over into that year? How are we going to manage with the pay increases? Because at the moment they're being quite high. one knock-on effect with that. And how will we manage with the pension contributions, which are now coming from Welsh Government to here, and have to go through other sources?
Who wants to answer that one?
I'll take that, Chair. When you say slippages into the year, are you referring to the fact that we will be underspending in 23-24, moving into 24-25? Okay. Well, in terms of the underspends from 23-24, firstly, we need to get, obviously, to the end of the year and know the exact position. And then the starting point for that will be to improve the financial resilience of the council. So, boost our general fund balance, because although we're in a good position in 23-24, you need to contextualise it with an organisation that spends nearly £250 million. So it's a relatively small percentage. But we will use that to help with our balances and our overall financial resiliences for the challenges that going forward. But what we will also do off the back of that is look at those to see if there are any of those that are recurrent in nature, and then they will form part of our financial planning for 25-6 and beyond. In the same way that there are some mitigations in here that relate to 22-23, when we had some underspends and we would look for recurrent nature. In terms of pay increases, we've built this budget with an assumed pay increase of 4% for 24-25. I think that's a reasonable assumption on which to base the budget, but clearly we won't know until the outcome of pay discussions. And that is, we will have to just manage that once we know that is, what that is. But that is the purpose why you have to have an adequate level of reserve. So if the pay award is slightly more than we've got within the budget, and we can't find another way to mitigate it in that year with either some underspends that are happening, we'll have to call on our balances. And that's why you need balances, because you wouldn't want to destabilise a budget because of that. What I will say is that in previous years we have been able to fully fund the pay awards, and that's undoubtedly helped, and we hopefully will be in the same position. In terms of pension contributions, I think you're referring there obviously to the increases in teachers and firefighters' pensions increases, I'm guessing, and the fact that we haven't had final confirmation yet of what we're going to get. Well, this budget assumes that we will get that money, and that has always been the case in the past, that money has been provided by the UK government and then passported through by the Welsh government. I have no reason to believe that will not be the case again. And I think the Minister has been quoted as saying whatever they get, they will pass on. So obviously we'll set the budget within that context. It does present a risk, but I don't think it would be prudent of elected members to have to make difficult financial decisions and reductions in service over something that we have a reasonable expectation is going to come our way. But when the final budget goes towards council, that will be brought out, as a risk. And obviously we will couch the wording around the fire levy that we will be, depending on where the money goes, whether it goes to fire or whether it comes to us, we will pay the relevant levy.
Steve, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, the only thing is, with the increase on pay, how much would we have to find if it went up 1% of what we've set the target at?
1% is about 1.2 million.
Thank you. Any more? David Williams, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay on screen, Chair?
We can hear you very well indeed, since you got that glitch out of the way, David.
Okay, thank you. First thing to say is I can see an awful lot of work has gone into this, and there's a tremendous amount of information in a very tight report. So I commend the officers for that work. And you know, looking ahead is a hard act to follow. So just make that observation. Going to 5.1, picking up on a couple of points here. Firstly, you indicated, I think, at D that there's been a hypothecated grant rationalisation around education, but it seemed to be suggesting at C that that was perhaps going to be a broader piece of work from Welsh Government to bring grants into the RSG. Is that the case? Part one, if we come in, Nigel, sorry. The second part of that is, are we confident that we will continue to make sure that that non-hypothecated funding will go to the right places? I'm thinking of education, for example, because obviously we need to make sure, if it's in the RSG, there's obviously a bit more flexibility as to how the council will use it. And I think we would be concerned to make sure that if it becomes non-hypothecated, it's still ring-fenced for its purpose, education in this instance, or some of the others. So that's my first point. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, there were two parts to the what the Minister set out to achieve. One was to reduce the administrative burden, either through putting them in the settlement or rationalisation. We don't know exactly the scope of the grants that are likely to find their way into the final settlement, but indications are they're going to be around the margins. But what we would expect, and what we've always done, is if a grant goes into the settlement and it is clearly listed then in the final settlement as a grant for that purpose, we have generally passported those grants through to the service from which they came for that very reason. Obviously, if this continues, then there will be a decision for members to make at some point in time. But we've always, when the grant has been identified on the face of the settlement that this has been passported in, we've passported it through, and I can't see why we would change that. In terms of the grant rationalisation, we do need to see the detail of that. The promises from the Welsh Government are that it's going to be genuine rationalisation, and there will be greater flexibility, but within an envelope that's still education or and whatever. What we don't want to see is 18 grants folded into one grant with 18 different sets of terms and conditions and whatever, which we have seen in the past. I think the bigger change, though, is that move to them being to local authorities as opposed to consortia and local authorities. And I certainly think, until we see the detail, and in this early period of that, we need to make sure there's stability within that, and whatever those grants are funding at the moment, they continue to fund, so that that can be worked through.
You don't want to come back to that, David?
Could I come in, Chair, just a moment? Sorry,
if you want.
Simi indicate.
I was actually seeing whether David wants, but no, please come in, Sue. You've obviously got something to add.
Yes, thank you. Just to say that the general principle of streamlining grants and making them less administratively burdensome and complex is both helpful from an efficiency point of view in broad terms, but also encourages greater transparency when people can interrogate these grants more easily and understand the purposes for which they're intended. I suspect it will help us direct those monies where they should be directed, and to do it in a way that is easier to explain and to administer. So broadly speaking, I'd really welcome these moves.
Thank you. David, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's very helpful in terms of, we don't know what we don't know, but we know the direction of travel. So if I could perhaps, whilst on this section, follow up with one or two other little things, is that okay?
No, please do.
Thank you. You referred to at E the fact that the homelessness grant should have been to be confirmed. Presumably that doesn't apply to the social care workforce grant, which I can see from the head movement is the case. So I guess it's really what's the potential impact or concern, or what is a concern from the service area in relation to that? And the second point at F is it's one of the relatively few bits of jargon, NDR multiplier. If somebody could explain that, that would be helpful.
Thank you, David. Pointed that one out.
In terms of, yeah, they've indicated on the homelessness grants they are to TBC. Now, whether that means the reduction is going to go away or whether it's going to be confirmed. On the social care workforce grant, the figures that we've shown here take account of that loss of grant within the balancing. But we did see local government has been pushing for between the provisional and the final for that grant to be reinstated. Now, whether that does get reinstated or not, that will be a political decision made down the bay. But we did see last week, of course, an announcement in England of extra money for English councils, which there will be an expectation there will be a consequential to Wales, and that will be one of the things they would that I'm sure local government will be pushing for. If that grant does get reinstated, that will be to a benefit to the figures in front of you today, rather than sort of taking away a shortfall. So that should be a benefit to the budget. And in terms of NDR multiplier, that's national domestic rates multiplier. That's basically the multiplier that businesses play in terms of their rates.
Thank you there.
Just in terms of the social care and workforce grant, obviously we're working across the respective directorates because it feeds both into the children's services side of things and the adult service side of things. So working across both directorates to try and mitigate against that.
Thank you there, Head of Service. Anybody else? Did you want to come back on any of that, David?
Not at this point. I probably have a couple of points I would like to make later on, but...
right, Jason O'Connell, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wondered, what do we have in the plan for perhaps what I would call non-essential capital projects, items perhaps like the British that are non-safety related? Have we looked at what we have in the plan for those for the next couple of years that would perhaps identify some savings we could make that would reduce the gap?
I mean, that's you're referring there, Councillor, to the capital programme, and of course, what we're concentrating here at the moment is the revenue budget.
Yeah. But have we looked at the capital programme to identify savings that we could make that would lower our operating expenses?
Sorry, Councillor. Are you talking there about investing in assets so we can take down or reduce our asset base so then we can reinvest back into services, or?
Well, I am, but I'm thinking of those kind of projects that we've got several million in capital expenditure forecast over the year. Can we push those out to the right and take those savings to reduce the funding gap we've identified here?
No, we can't. Capital resources can only be used for capital purposes, so they can only be used to invest in assets which are going to have a life of greater than 1 year. They cannot be used to fund recurring revenue expenditure. If we did that, we'd have our collars felt by the regulators quite strongly.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Right. Other questions? Is anything in the chamber? Hands up.
Councillor Williams, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
If I may, Chair, move to item 9 of risks.
Yeah.
I share some of the concerns echoed by my colleague, Councillor Evans, around the pay award. I think it's likely to be under pressure, shall we say, given some of the prospective things that are going ahead there. So I think that will be something that will come back to us. But I appreciate you've got to make a budget estimate based on a reasonable assumption. But I fear that that's likely to be a pressure going forward at B. The second point was the at G. You've mentioned there was no update from Welsh Government regarding a revised approach to the Regional Integration Fund. and you remove that possible pressure. So again, I presume that if that gets crystallised, it's a slightly better position for the budget, or how does it impact, I suppose, was my question.
Thank you.
On just touching back on pay, obviously, if the final settlement yields us anything of benefit to these numbers, my first recommendation to the executive and the leader will be to increase the contingency wrapped around pay for the very reasons that both of you have said. And indeed, this time last year, that's what happened, and that certainly helped us in 23-24. In terms of G, this budget assumes that we wouldn't have to pay effectively the tapering on RIF. It's already assumed that. So the risk is if that assumption was wrong and we suddenly had to pay tapering, but we've had confirmed in the last week that actually we're not going to have tapering for the next 2 years. So that risk won't be there when this budget now goes to Council. That's changed since we obviously published the report.
Yes, I was conscious of that because I attended the Regional Partnership Board meeting in my role as acting chair of TVA, so hence part of the question.
So, anything else, David? Well, you got your list going?
The risk of being a bit of a monotone, apologies, colleagues, but...
No, you've got the questions there. Let's hear them.
Two things, really. The first thing was, again, when you're getting to the first appendix, I think it is, there's a significant reduced cost envelope down for energy from initial assumptions. That does seem quite high, 1.75 million. So it was really sort of, how confident are we in that, in that schedule of mitigation? And if I do my final question, which is, obviously we have had limited opportunity, but reference has been made to public comments on the budget. So 2 points really. One, is there some scope to be able to respond to those public comments to sort of say what might have been considered, has already been considered, is actually outside of our hands, again in the interest of transparency. And second point, are there any things that have come from those suggestions that the professionals in the council feel are worthy of further investigation?
Yeah, can I, as chair, just beg indulgence because David's reminded me of something about the price of energy, because it's one of those things that goes up and down. Whether we like it or not, we're in a precarious situation with the wider world out there. So I'm wondering how you get energy costs going up. I'm wondering whether we're asking enough there.
I can answer the question on energy, Chair. That 1,750,000 was effectively the difference, I don't know if members may recall, in the 23-24 budget, because of various international factors. Energy spiked massively, so we had to obviously put those budgets in, but a lot of those budgets were then funded effectively by reserves because we thought it would be a spike. So during the course of 2023, energy prices have come down, but not come down totally, but they come down enough for us to be confident that that saving will be achieved.
Thank you for that. So any other? Who's going to answer the rest of David's questions?
I'll answer the question about me.
In terms of the public comment and the public questions, I mean, obviously, like yourself, we've only just received them today. But I think you can expect some commentary on that and the response to that, either within the final cabinet report, but certainly within the final budget report that comes before members on the 27th of February.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, did you want to come back? Because there are some really interesting questions in there that I'm sure members might want to elucidate a bit.
I've finished. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Anybody else want to come in? Burning questions on this? We had a good.
Councillor Evans, Chair.
I can't. Yeah, I appreciate there's a lot of hands up in the chamber, not online here.
Going on what Councillor Williams has said about the energy, how will the new development in the car park and the solar panels that are proposed on that impact on those figures?
I can pick that one up, Chair, if I can. Yes, those figures have been taken into account. So the project that we're going to be delivering in terms of the car park has factored into the energy figures that we're putting forward. So there's been a lot of work taking place between the energy team and the projects team to make sure that's set at the right level, because obviously we don't have that exact certainty as to what that level of energy coming through is yet, but that won't change those figures.
Thank you there,
The exact member, Chair.
If I may, Chair, I just want to comment that the scale at which we are introducing solar panels across the estate is a good news story for this council, and not only sits well with our declaration of the climate emergency, but helps to account for our optimism about being able to manage our financial pressures in the medium term. So yes, the car park is one example, but solar panels on schools, for example, is another really productive area. So thank you for raising that.
Steve, did you want to come back there?
No, that sort of covered it, you know. It does well for our environmental thing, but it also do with more efficiency the costs. So that's been explained by the officers, so no.
Right, so more questions, chamber and online. I'm not getting a lot of questions coming in here today. Am I getting that we're actually fairly content with this?
Councillor Williams, Chair.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I note, obviously, in the appendix and in the report you've referenced where there's been some use of reserves. 330,000 was one figure, and I think 26,000 in adult services around service development. It's just a suggestion that when we get to the final cabinet report, it's might be helpful to frame that in the context of what the draw on reserves was last year when we had to deal with energy, etc., which I think will help members put this in proportion in terms of our overall planning and budget position this year compared to last.
Thank you. Go on then, Nigel.
I was just going to say I think that's an excellent suggestion. We'll take that on board, and of course, with the final budget papers, it will be contextualised within our reserve tables as well, which will be in there. So I think that's it's an important point you draw out. Last year was a significant contribution of reserves, recognising a unusual and significant set of circumstances, and we don't use reserves for recurrent expenditure. The use of reserves in this budget is more back to what it would be normally, you know, and I think that's the point. I think that's the point you're making, which we can certainly bring out. I think that's good.
Nigel, I was about to say, we hear what you say on this, because you are not fond, your department's not fond of using reserves, are they?
I've never been fond of using reserves in the 20 years
I've
been doing this job, and certainly wouldn't recommend it for recurring expenditure. You quote me well, Chair.
I listened to you say this for 10 years. Stephen?
Councillor Thomas and Councillor Evans in the chamber, please.
Thomas, then. Sorry. Go for it.
There are three proposals on the report about relation to looked after children. I just wondered whether you could enlarge on those, please.
Sorry, Councillor Thomas, I had difficulty hearing that. Could you repeat
There's three items on the agenda there looking at support for looked after children. I just wondered whether you could enlarge on those, please, and what the implications are.
Which page and paragraphs are you referencing there, Councillor?
On the appendix there, under total health and social services, appendix 2.
Sorry, Councillor, bear with me. I'm just trying to find it. Sorry.
What page would it be, please, Colette?
It's page 10 on mine, but it's appendix 1.
Appendix 120.
Eliminating profit from the care of looked after children. Proposals, radical reform.
In terms, sorry, in terms of the radical reform, that links to the eliminated gender. and some of the work we're trying to do there that's been done there to reduce demand within the service area, but also to examine the issues that are relating to high-cost placements and high-cost residential placements. So that's what that information there captures.
Are you okay with that one, Councillor Thomas?
Can I ask, you mentioned reserves, can I ask how much percentage?
Just a minute, Steve, I was waiting for a reply from Colette about whether she was happy with that reply.
Does that apply to the other two proposals as well, please?
Yeah, so the eliminating profit and the radical reform are both interlinked. Yeah, as is the third around eliminating profit within social care, within children looked after. So they're all part of a bigger picture of, reducing demand within the service area, but reducing cost as well within the service area, particularly, as it relates to high-cost residential placements and how we can mitigate against that locally.
Are you okay with that then, Councillor Thomas?
That's fine, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Steve, please come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask how much percentage do we keep in our revenue reserves comparable against our settlement? I know you don't like spending anything out of the reserves, but what's our minimum, to keep in?
We've got a policy that we, on the general fund itself, absolute, the ideal is 7.5%. Our absolute lowest is 5%.
That's great. I just wanted an overall picture against what we get with the settlement and how much we hold in reserves.
Right. Any more? No hands up here anymore in the chamber? Come on.
Nothing further in the chamber, Chair.
Oh, just a minute. Let me get this off. Yeah, so anybody want to sum up on this at all? Because obviously from what I can see, is people seem to be relatively happy with this, unless somebody's got comments they want to say about the general tenor of this budget report. Anyone want to say anything on that?
Councillor Seaborn, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. Can you come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I did have a question on here. I did contact the executive member prior to this meeting and I had an answer from her, but I will bring it up in this meeting. I was a bit concerned to see that £10,000 was being taken out of the play service for the service that it provides for our young people throughout the borough. And I was given the account of the spend and the grants that actually the play service brings in. My question really is, what if one of the grants does not materialise? How are we fit for purpose there with our play service?
I think more broadly, I think some of the elements of that reduction within the play service relates to our CCGO, Communities and Children's Grant. We're reviewing that wholesale going into 24-25 in acknowledgement that it's been a grant that's existed for quite some time. This has been the first year we've experienced a full reduction on it. It's always been fairly flat. But there's acknowledgement we've got to review that now into 24-25 with the play service obviously sitting in as part of that to see where we can shift resource based upon that level of need. And again, in acknowledgement that there is an excellent service provided there through play.
Rose, come back.
Thank you, Chair.
You're happy with that, are you, Rose?
As I stated, I did receive an answer from my prior to the meeting, so thank you.
Right.
Councillor Evans, please, Chair.
I was about to say Councillor Evans, I see his hand going up.
This is more of a comment. When you look at the budget report or any of the statement you give, a lot of it's done through unknowns, and people need to realise that a lot of this is unknowns until we get to that settlement. So we're taking it on face value that the figures we're getting are able to do what they're supposed to be doing. So I thought I'd remind members of that because it's still an active document, really, because the budget changes whatever the funding change.
Nigel, can you comment on that, please?
I mean, at the end of the day, the budget is a set of estimates, and it's a set of judgments. And I have a statutory responsibility when this budget goes before Council on the 27th of February to give you an assurance that, in my opinion, they are a reasonable set of estimates. We'll never get actuals on everything, and over the last 2 or 3 years, crafting estimates and making judgments have been more difficult. If you think back to the early days of austerity, although the challenge was difficult, it was relatively easy because it was quite benign. There was low inflation, there was no pay inflation, and we had a straightforward cash cut. Now we have to make a range of judgments, and we believe this is a balanced set of judgments. But I have to give you that professional assurance when it comes up on the 27th of February, which I will do for the last time.
You do add that, Nigel. It's for the last time. What you have to ask your members on mitigations is: are you happy with the mitigations? Bearing in mind that some of us have sat here for 10 years looking at this, and or longer in some cases. There are members here. Are you happy with what you're looking at? And I'm just being asked, Councillor Morgan wanted to add something. The exec member wants to also say, Sue?
Yes, thank you, Jen. If I may take the liberty, I'm confident that Nigel would not be bringing us this set of estimates without that level of confidence. And I just wanted to commend members for drawing attention to the most volatile elements of the estimates around energy and pay. You're quite right. These are areas that will always, in the times that we're living in, be particularly worthy of constant review and scrutiny. And I'm can assure you that they will be under constant review and scrutiny. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank Nigel and the two Daves for the work that they've done with the extended team in bringing this financial planning report to us today. Probably the last one, Nigel and Dave, but very much appreciate their efforts. Thank you.
You managed to get a sum up there, didn't you? And I think I'm going to sum up and say this actually looks relatively benign, to be honest. I can't see anything there. I do remind people that the energy and pay is the thing that everybody worries about. If there isn't anything, can I draw this bit to, unless anybody's got any pressing questions or remarks, then can I draw this part of it to a close?
Councillor Williams, yeah.
David?
It was simply to ask, Chair, that what has been noted in terms of potential recommendations from this discussion.
You're on to it. Good.
Thank you. And that would be helpful if Rebecca could summarise that. I've had the advantage,
I was about to say that, David. Yes.
Sorry. I've had the advantage, Chair, that I have seen officers scribbling interestedly in front of me, so I know that things are being picked up. But perhaps if Bex could, that would be great.
Yeah. Could you make sure that's there were about two. I've noted there's about 3 or 4 that so if between us, can we have those out if we would, please?
Thank you, Chair. I believe Nigel's going to come in second.
Okay.
I've captured 2, I think. One, there's something around contextualising the use of reserves in 24-25 and setting it against the exceptional circumstances in 23-24. And there's one then on the public considerations that have arisen, that we've only recently had, and that you, I think, as scrutiny would expect some commentary on those, either within the final Cabinet report or the final Council report before Council for members.
I think there was the observation from Councillor Evans and myself, which you answered effectively Nigel, which was that if there is an improved budget settlement, then the area of risk is known around perhaps pay, and therefore to address that.
That sounds reasonable.
I didn't capture anything further than what Nigel's already run through, Chair, so unless members have any further recommendations they want to offer while officers and the exec member are here to discuss them further.
There was the energy one as well, wasn't there?
Is that an actual recommendation, Chair, that you'd like to formulate?
I don't know. Other members had views on it, and I would be moved by what they suggest.
Personally, Chair, I was satisfied with the exec members' report that this is under review, and as we would expect, the estimates have been given in a fair and reasonable way, and the rationale for that. So, I think there's nothing we can say further than it's been stated.
David, I think they've been given a pretty good going over. So unless anybody's got any burning things they need to bring out of this thing, I think we've done a reasonably good job on that, and it's been really helpful.
Nigel, would like to come in, please, Chair.
I was about to suggest Nigel came in and concluded this, if possible.
I wasn't going to conclude anything. Obviously, the executive member has kindly referenced myself and the two Daves. And I just think we ought to put on record that we couldn't do this without a bunch of people that are sitting in they're sitting off camera, because that's where they like to be. Our LFOs who diligently work through all this, keep us on the straight and narrow, work with service strategic directors to bring forward mitigations. They always come to scrutiny. They always sit there quietly. They're not usually as quiet as this. And I just think it's important that you, as members and chair, recognise the huge amount of work they do in pulling any budget we pull together. And arguably, Dave and myself have the easier job.
I take the hint there and thank them very much indeed for that. Where I do see them in other places and understand very much what you do on this. But Dave, and yourself, and the executive member, thank you very much for this part of it. We now need to move on to the other part of it. We obviously it suggested a 5-minute comfort break for anybody that wanted it. So we take. I've got that right, haven't I, Rebecca? A 5-minute break now.
Yes, Chair. So I propose if everyone could return at 3:05, if that's okay. Everyone online and in the chamber, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
If that's the case, Chair, I'm going to shoot off. So good luck for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Delivery Plan 24-25. The report presents to members an update on the development of the Council's county plan. Again, can I welcome all officers who have joined us for this report and the executive member, corporate governance and performance. So we hand over now to Councillor Jones and Stephen to give us the intro on this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to well, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Oh, you're wonderful. It was only a glitch.
I know I'm wonderful, but...
No, we can hear you wonderfully. We can hear you wonderfully, Peter.
No. What's going to happen, Chair? I'm going to introduce the report, and then I'm going to hand back to you, and the Chief Exec and officers will take questions, if that's okay. So yeah, I'll go straight into what I've got to say. The report sets out the draft delivery plan for 2024-25 for consideration by scrutiny. Members will recall since adopting a new county plan in December 2022, we have produced and published an annual delivery plan for each financial year. We will continue to do this throughout the lifespan of the county plan, highlighting the key activity planned for the financial year ahead. Last year, the publication of the Council's delivery plan in 2023-24 alongside the 2023-24 budget more closely aligned our services and financial planning. We continue to bring these processes closer together. For the first time this year, we are presenting both the draft budget
and annual delivery plan for scrutiny alongside each other. As you have already heard today, like all councils in Wales, we are continuing to operate under significant financial constraints, but this does not dampen our ambitions, and I hope that members can see this coming through our proposed delivery plan for 2024-25. The basket of activities, milestones and performance measures set out within our 2024-25 delivery plan aim to take forward the Council's aspiration for each of the county plan's 9 priorities using the available budget. The activities and measures that make up the delivery plan will be used to monitor and assess the progress being made against our stated 9 priorities. It attempts to focus on the key activity that will improve well-being in Torfaen in those areas we have identified as being a priority, including taking forward the Council's recovery in education, helping people into work, tackling the cost of living crisis, furthering the Council's community approach, improving recycling rates and reducing our carbon footprint. I will be very keen to hear members' views on the draft delivery plan and how it might be strengthened. This is not the end of the story, however. As has been the case during the current financial year, the delivery plan will form the basis of our monitoring and reporting during 2024-25, including biannual reports to Council. Chair, you will remember that we delivered a few reports last year to Council, and we're going to continue to do that. This continuous monitoring process will ensure we collectively keep the plan under review, and members will be able to contribute to have their say on future developments. I think it's absolutely essential on this that we keep it under review and that members are kept up to date all the time. On that note, Chair, I'm going to hand back to you.
Thank you there. So, Stephen, could you put could you give us your message on this before we go into the scrutiny?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose very much building on that of the executive member, really to view the plan, as with previous years, in the way that we try to align our activities, of course, to the long-term strategic goals and objectives of the Council set out within the county plan. It will assist us in allocating resources effectively, maintaining our framework for accountability, which we all know we're forever trying to be more accountable to members and to our public. In of itself, it's a communication tool, of course, to inform stakeholders along the way throughout the year, including our residents, our businesses and our members, of course, in the way that we are delivering our planned activities. It openly sort of discusses the challenges and risks along that journey, so that we can proactively mitigate risk and then provide us with the basis for measuring and evaluating our performance overall. So we welcome Scrutiny's comments and views and input today very much. I'm joined here, of course, by our strategic directors and heads of service who will be able to answer some of the detail that sits within the plan, but we welcome the opportunity to discuss the report with Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. I would remind members that we're not doing the scrutiny on the subject areas. This is about the plan and how obviously it is illustrative that some of us have got very strong views about bits of this. That's illustrative if you want to do it, but please do not go into trying to scrutinise any of these areas. I know there's always a temptation. I'll open it up, chamber and online. And who wants to kick off?
Councillor Seaborn, please, Chair.
Rose?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a general question. I attended my first meeting of the Torfaen Leisure Trust and actually shared the possibility of them sharing the county plan. My question is, how do we actually share our county plan with our other partners? Because I know it's a relatively new board on the trust, but they weren't aware of a county plan. and I just wondered how we get that voice out there for people to actually join us in sharing our county plan.
Rose, that's one hell of a question. It's actually something I keep saying to people. We've got a county plan. How do you get it out there? Go on then. Who's going to answer that one?
I'll pick that one up, Chair, if that's okay. No,
Thanks,
you're absolutely
Dave.
right. So it's really, really important for us to start getting this message out about the county plan. Whenever we've presented this lists a series of activities that the council will deliver, but the aspirations are one we've been working really hard with our partners to ensure that are shared across Torfaen. We're starting to get that message out. So a lot of the groups that we have in place, Community Resilient Group, our Strategic Housing Partnership, have had sight of this. The Leisure Trust, as you say, is a relatively new board. Members will be aware that there's an activity within this plan this year for us to work with the Leisure Trust around sport and leisure and our strategic approach to that. So that probably gives us the best time to raise it with that particular partnership. But by the end of this year, I would expect public service board partners, strategic housing partners, community resilience partners and leisure partners to all be familiar and aware of what's in the county plan.
Rose?
Thank you, Chair.
Chief Executive, please.
Yeah, it's worth just reminding members, of course, that there was a substantial degree of engagement in establishing the county plan, which was obviously first published in December 22. This will ultimately be the third delivery plan, I think, that follows on from that county plan. So it's important to remember that all of the activity that sits within this year's delivery plan is founded on those 9 wellbeing objectives and those overarching themes that we established when we first drafted the plan, which is back to that point really about ensuring that our delivery programme aligns to our longer term strategic objectives. And that's important to remember because it may be not necessarily prominent in people's memories, but there was a substantial degree of engagement done at that point. That would have included engagement with partners. It's true to say, certainly with regards to Councillor Seaborn's point around the Leisure Trust, it would have been an entirely different board at that time. So new members of that board, we do need to pick up engagement with. Just for your reassurance, Councillor Seaborn, you'll be aware of, we meet with the Trust every 6 weeks formally and every 4 weeks with the Chief Exec of the Trust to ensure that that level of communication is proactively managed between us. But we can never do enough of the engagement of the type that you're describing. It's an iterative process. We'll continue to move forward and do more of it.
Councillor Evans?
The question, I think, the county plan is brilliant. I like the way it's presented and everything. The question I got is, if we've got a golden strand, how do we build on that to make it even better? And on the other side of the coin, if we've got a free rope and we're not performing to get to the golden thread, how do we accommodate that?
I'll respond to that in the first instance because it's actually a chance to introduce to members some of the broader work that we're currently working on. I think it's a great question, and it's one that actually similar question to that we've been asked by Audit Wales, for example, constructively in the same way that it is here. What we're working, we recognise, of course, that the county plan and each annual delivery plan really focus around medium-term aspirations. What we're working on and what matters to us as a county more broadly is that we understand our destination in 2 or 3 political cycles, not just one political cycle at a time. So we're currently doing a piece of work which is very much linked to the work of the strategic, the PSB, Public Service Board for Gwent, and the Marmot region that we have just become. This has, of course, been reported in the past through Council. But we're developing an approach that focuses us much more on assuring a longer-term master plan, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. It won't be as detailed in any way, shape or form as the county plan is. which of course is set by within each of the political cycles. But it will ensure, and I think this answers your question, Councillor, it will ensure that what we are doing throughout each year, throughout each medium-term cycle, it will ensure that that work isn't derailed. It's all heading in the same towards the same destination, which ultimately is to tackle those inequalities across our communities and from both a people and a place perspective. And, of course, that we as a council are working as hard as we possibly can to be as effective and efficient as we can and to be as sustainable as we can. So I think that sort of is a piece of work that we're currently working on, and that will be coming before you in not too distant a future.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Did you want to come back at all on that, Steve?
I only to say, now he's mentioned the PSP, I got to mention I sit on the scrutiny for the fire.
Right, thank you, Steve. I think we know that by now. Right, Janet Jones, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Steve. Stuart, just a general question or observation under the education of strive to achieve the 95%. Should we not be really, how can you put it, acknowledging the work that's done by our schools in achieving higher attendance levels? We're always criticising absenteeism, but surely we should be recognising some of the good work that's done, also by our Inspire team and those getting children not in education into an educational environment. Should we not be sort of offering some sort of reward or recognition as a council?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I mean, I think we do offer that recognition to the schools. Obviously, there continues to be a challenge for us in terms of our aspirations of attendance, but I would say that we do give that individual acknowledgement to schools and a collective acknowledgement to schools and head teachers going forward. There's some acknowledgements through some of the work that we do or some of the monitoring visits we have with Eston as well around some progress, albeit that we still need to continue to progress with our attendance rates.
Okay, Janet.
Thanks, Jason. Yes, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Jason.
Right. Okay, who's next? Chamber online. I don't see any hands up.
Councillor Williams, please, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I should also declare the interest in being on part of the CSP scrutiny, and I think my colleague, Councillor Seaborn, would want to do the same. But my observation initially was sort of perhaps a little more consistency in the targets and milestones bit. So for Wellbeing Objective 1, it's very helpful by such and such a time, a budget for a period of time. It's less clear perhaps in Objective 2, where there's a figure, 83 to 86% on number 2, for example, on page 37. I presume this is by the end of the reporting year. I just think for consistency and clarity, the best, to follow it through across all the objectives. At the moment, there is some variation. And I think it becomes a little easier to track progress when you see some of these things. And particularly then if you're sort of saying, well, actually, did we spend it all at once? Or have we managed to spend it all within a year, etc.? So I just give that as a general point for observations. Thank you.
Could I just add in there that when we've gone through resources scrutiny in the old days, we called that column 5, and it was target days. It's something we do like. It's not on there. Maybe you've got it on your master plan.
Just as a response, Councillor Williams, that obviously there is acknowledgement to tie matters in so they're consistent in terms of some of those the reporting timeframes. There will be some, of course, that will vary because they will be reported upon or determined externally. So, for example, in terms of our school year, we know that our school year doesn't correspond to our financial year, for example. So there will be some variations there, but I think that's a point well made.
Could I just...
Sorry, Chair, the Chief Executive would like to comment as well, please.
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah.
Well, only to acknowledge the point that was made. The consistency, I think, does matter. And I think what we'll do, Councillor, and I think this is what you're asking for, whilst you've pointed out an example within the report, I think what matters is that we'll review the report through that lens of consistency and we'll ensure that we try to bring a much more consistent set of numbers and measures to the whole of the delivery plan. That's what I'd suggest we do.
Could I? That sounds very reasonable. Does anybody else want to come in?
Councillor Williams would like to come back on that, Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point has been picked up correctly. So thank you for that. And I think, you know, there are some very good examples within this of actually what would be done in quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, etc. So I appreciate the comment you've made, Jason. It's not going to be possible in some instances, but in some cases, my assumption is that there's a figure. This is the figure that we're going to have to spend through the year, and therefore, you know, there's a little bit about when we're talking about matching to the budget. You know, it's actually sort of, and the alignment of those things, it's obviously an opportunity as we're seeing the budget spend to see if that's actually then translated in how we're managing to take that forward within the county plan. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I will make the point I made just now as well. Perhaps you didn't realise what I was saying, that time and time again in scrutiny, we miss a column off the end, which I have asked for, where you actually have the dates and times of all this, because you've got it in some of them, not all of them. David makes a very valid point there, but quite often we do not have those dates, and we find budget expenditure goes over, or we don't get completions. That's the point I was making about column 5, because a number of times that scrutineers actually make that comment at various committees I've been on. Can somebody answer that one, please, Chief Exec?
Chief Exec, Chair.
I think, so to some degree, of course, this is a plan that's set out across the whole of the year.
Yeah.
And then we'll have, of course, quarterly and biannually twice a year updates into council that will demonstrate our progress towards achieving those objectives. That's the red, amber, green aspect of our reporting. So
that's good.
We're quite clear. I suppose what I would say to scrutiny members to consider is that we try to write this plan in a way that is as accessible as it can possibly be to all members of the public. And I thank Councillor Evans. It's not the first time he's complimented the ease of read of the county plan and the delivery plan, because it's designed to be that, exactly. And it's good to know that at least for some people that it's been effective in that way. What I can assure members of is that delivery across the council and our performance against delivery is on a 12-weekly cycle. Every directorate and every area of delivery, including our delivery plan for the county plan, is under scrutiny of the leadership team on that 12-weekly reporting cycle. So we are picking those kind of issues up, Councillor Chair. What I would say is I'm not sure that it would add value to this report, but I do think, though, there's nothing wrong with us ensuring that there is an assurance actually that's being fed into that those council updates that we're giving you twice a year, that we're delivering on time, on budget and on quality, which is what we're trying to assure. So I think we're on the same page in what we're trying to ensure is able to be scrutinised and to be able to held account for. I just think we've got to make sure that we get the right way of reporting and monitoring it.
I would also like to add, I think it's excellent. I mean, it's the 9 points. When I talk to people, I can say that we're doing this. It's consistent. So I think Steve Evans has said what I think a lot of us, we've got something we can work with as well as yourselves, which is very useful to members. But it's about ownership, isn't it? And that's the other thing. We can own this, and that's it for members. That's quite important.
Councillor Evans, please, Chair.
I didn't know whether I wanted to say this because it's not the right word. Because I'm not dealing with your hands at all. To test the systems of the county plan, whatever strand you've got, are we testing it with AI? The test our system?
Interesting point, yeah.
or do we use AI to promote things or put things out there or tackle some of the issues? You know, I just think it might be the way forward to modernise it.
Yeah, I'll take that one if I can, Chair. There's a really good point around AI. We know that AI is increasingly becoming a feature of what the public and the private sector can do. We're using some tools provisionally at the minute that essentially help officers in terms of some of the day-to-day activities. So things like helping with summarising reports, summarising documents, that type of thing. So there are AI-based tools that we're using. What we'd have to do in this context is look at how AI could actually help add value. So what we don't want to lose by introducing AI is that scrutiny and that assurance that we're able to provide you by people going through it and looking at it line for line. So we'll take that away. We'll run this through that piece of software that we do and see if it comes up with any recommendations. But I want to assure members that that's not going to replace the level of scrutiny or assurance that you get from us as officers. We'll still have officers scrutinising this in depth.
Yeah, I totally understand that. It's more about challenge what you're actually doing, not so much writing the reports, but if you put in a project out there, AI can test whether you're doing the right things in the right place at the right time. You know, those type of challenges, not challenges on officers, but on the county plan strands themselves, you know.
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting point. So one of the things the AI tools can do is check whether these things have been done elsewhere. And so feedback, or in this instance, in these different areas, this is how that was done. So it can really feed that back and give that challenge. We are starting to do some of that. So where we're looking for examples of best practice, or where we're looking for, do we think this will work in a Torvine context, it can pull all that data together for us and say, you might want to consider this part of our demographics or this part of our economy. The AI tools can do that, and we are starting to use it for that.
Right, I'm going to put a supplement in here because something struck me very forcefully. One of the biggest problems you got with expenditure and grant is sometimes you get it just tomorrow, yesterday, and you got to spend it really, really quickly. You've got a couple of grants you've had like that recently. Other times you've had it a long time ago, and you've got to find out what you're going to do with it. With this sort of setup and what Steve's suggesting about AI, certainly, would this help you spend it better, quicker, slower, whatever, and know what you're spending? Because the use of this tool, this plan, delivery plan, should help you do that. But we've had some examples in the past, certainly when I've been on the council, where you've had real problems about identifying how you do it. Dave, I think you probably got the handle on this one.
Yeah, happy to come back in, Chair. So the AI tools that are out there at the minute tend to be what's called large language models. So what they do is they pull a lot of information from data that sits out there, either in the public domain or on our systems. And when I say data, I mean the sort of generic stuff that we write in report, not personal data. It wouldn't have access to that. So we can always use it to challenge what we're doing in the way that I was explaining to Councillor Evans then. Yeah. Whether it can identify what savings or what activities we should be doing more comes down into the realms of that choice and that member choice and those officers' recommendations. So we can use it to give us some ideas around that, and we can use it to help inform, but I don't think we can use it to do the process because they're based on those language models rather than anything different.
Thank you for that. Right, next, please, Chamber, or there's no hands up. Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the community's renewal part of it. And I understand the need to renew the town centres of our borough, the 3 main towns within the borough. But our communities are built around our town centres, not our town centres built around our communities. And I just wondered whether or not we should look to broaden our horizons on our communities rather than, for example, Cumbraen is a privately owned enterprise. You know, but we have Pontnewydd, we have Crosskillock, we have my own ward of Fairwater. Pontypool's got Trevethin and Pontnewydd and Wingfelin. So our communities are around our town centres. We can do our town centres, but the infrastructure in our communities is in dire need of renewal. And what are we doing to look towards that part of the renewal?
You're inviting comment from Dave Lidge again, aren't you?
Yes, I'm happy to take that one again, Chair. Yeah, there's two different things at play here for me. So there is the activity that takes place in our communities, and a lot of the county plan is actually based in that. So most of the activity you'll see in the county plan isn't focused on town centres. Most of it is focused out in the community doing the doing. So particularly with the new Chair Prosperity Fund activities, they're taking place out in our communities. When it comes to the actual place-based sort of regeneration funding, the objective that we're looking to achieve is exactly the one that you mentioned. It's about that investment in wider place. And we're having discussions, as you'll know, with UK government around what that means for long-term plan for towns in Cwmbran. But the delivery plan for this year has to reflect the funding that we've got available this year. And that funding is very much aligned to town centres. And unfortunately, that is the funding priorities of our funders that we're delivering against in terms of this plan. So we're comfortable and confident that it will deliver good activity and help to contribute towards the county plan. It's not the only thing that we need to do, and we do know that we need to do more. It will now come down to, can we secure and source other sources of funding in future years to enable us to do some more of that place-based regeneration activity? And can we start to think a little bit differently about it? Does it all have to be big capital projects, or can some of it be smaller scale redesign, as you'll know, as we've had conversations about, led by younger people, that doesn't need to be big funding applications? So I think there's a lot that we can do, but that is the reason why you'll see the big items in there being very much focused on town from a regeneration perspective.
Thank you, David.
Sorry, Chair. It's not only the small things, it's the infrastructure as well. I mean, Cwmbran Town Centre, 70-year-old, Blanavon, much older. You know, the infrastructure was put there many, many years ago, and it's breaking down. And that's, you know, what are we doing to encourage our partners like Welsh Water or the electric boards and things like that to actually, you know, commit themselves into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
If I could come back in there, Chair. No, I think that's a really good point, and perhaps this is something, and again in a Cwmbran context, we can use the long-term plan for towns to prompt a discussion on that, because we'll have other partners around the table who are responsible for infrastructure that sits outside of the council's responsibility. We'll then have to look at how we have those conversations outside of Cwmbran. Obviously, we've got the trigger to do it in Cwmbran with that long-term plan for towns. But yeah, certainly happy to pick that.
Right.
If the Chief Executive would like to comment as well, Chair.
I was about to say the Chief Executive's got a view here, I suspect.
I do, thank you, Chair. I appreciate your support. I think what I would do is just bring, again, members back to the wider themes within the county plan: wellbeing, sustainability, connectivity, and of course culture and heritage. They're set out within the beginning of the report. There's activity going on across our communities, very much in the way that Councillor Seaborn has said, that's built around that. I think there are areas that we can certainly improve or certainly focus development on, but it is important to recognise that as we improve connectivity across the borough, just as an example, it's not just happening in Cwmbran, it will be happening across the entire borough. So, you know, there are things going on at scale, but at the moment, as David has pointed out, the funding is focused around regenerating town centres, and there is, of course, benefit for wider communities as a result of those town centres being prosperous. So to some degree, it makes some sense as to why government UK and Welsh will focus in those areas. But that's not to say that here in Torvine we don't take the challenge that you've put before us today, Councillor Seaborn, very seriously. And I think we just need to look at those wider themes as to how we can do more of it.
You right there, Rose?
Thank you, Chair.
Janet Jones?
Thanks, Chair.
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Aren't you glad?
I'm not saying a word.
Can I start again, Stuart?
Please do.
Heritage and culture is so important to Torfaen. What advances are we making to get more people coming in to visit the iconic facilities, right from Cwmbran, Pontypool, up to Blenavon, please?
I think you're on me again here, Chair, on this one.
Sorry, Dave.
don't get too overloaded.
So there is an item in the county plan, delivery plan, that I just want to draw members to. It's on page 55, around promoting Torfaen as a destination, working with our visitor attractions so that we can offer attractive packages for day and overnight visitors. You'll see that there's milestones set against that, linked into community tourism, which is funded through the Shared Prosperity funding that we have in place. That gives us now a clear remit within that line of activity for us to be developing proposals around promoting the attractions that we have as a visitor destination. Now, members will be aware we're looking at working differently with our visitor attractions to try and use them as the hook to bring people in, as opposed to us promoting necessarily just the area in general, because it ultimately is attractions that people are coming in to deliver. So this will build on the activity that we already started under Shared Prosperity Fund, which is the work with Torfaen Tourism Association, who are producing that mapping activity that members will be familiar with as well. So you should see something on that this financial year around Torfaen Tourism Association's product, and next financial year you'll see more activity through that line of delivery.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Right. Anybody in chamber? There's not anybody got a hand up here.
Councillor Thomas and Councillor Williams, Chair.
Councillor Thomas.
On Wellbeing Objective 2, we've got an item there where it says about ensure qualified social work caseloads are manageable and reduced to an average of 20. There's no date on that, so is that in the year 2024? And how are we going to manage that?
That's to be achieved by within the financial year of that plan, within the year of that plan. In order to achieve that, what we're looking at is how we manage demand effectively, so how we manage what's coming through the door. I think we referenced in Council a couple of weeks ago around, shifting our lines around prevention and early intervention. So really starting to shift that caseload and that level of demand there for children's services, social workers. And what I'm saying, there's a variation within that, having I guess a fairly bland 20. Some social workers will fluctuate up and down, and there is currently, there's a variation within that. As it stands at present, we've got, I think, 62% of our children's services social workers are within line within that caseload. But like I said, there's variations. But it's all around managing demand. That's our crucial element there. It's not around having more resource. It's around managing demand. So we're stopping, we're stopping that need for statutory intervention, statutory services.
Chief Exec would like to contribute as well, please, Chair.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to add, actually, it builds very much on what Jason has just said. The number 20 associated with cases in children's services is somewhat arbitrary, it's fair to say. It really is about having manageable cases. There are some social workers who will have far fewer cases than 20, and it's a full caseload, let's be frank. They're very complex cases. So to some degree, this is about the way that we set up our structures and our services and align our teams to the work. It could well be that there are some circumstances where it's appropriate very much for social workers to hold more than 20 cases because the risks that they carry can be properly managed. And that's the assurance that I speak with Jason and his teams around, and with David actually for adults, because it's equally applicable to adults, of course. That's the conversation that I'm having frequently with them, and that's what we're always looking at as part of that reporting cycle that I mentioned. But the other thing is, and this does come back to the potential for AI. We know that one of the challenges for social care practitioners is writing complex reports and analysing complex data, and even just updating records, which in itself can take a significant amount of time. So not all of the social workers' time is spent in contact with our clients, of course. So I think there is a real opportunity for us going forward over the course of the next year, very much aligned to Wellbeing Objective 9, which is for us to find greater effectiveness and efficiency across our services, to look at our structures, look at the way our teams are operating, look at opportunities using AI and other mechanisms to achieve efficiencies, and then we'll ensure, but at the same time, always ensuring that we've got the balance right between ensuring that we're providing high quality, safe care, but also we're assuring the public that what we're delivering is very effective and efficient services, and we're giving good value for money across what we're doing. So the 20 overall is a useful benchmark, but I wouldn't expect it necessarily to be consistent across all social care. And we perhaps need to have a look at that measure in this plan to make that a little bit more clear as to what we mean by that. But so it's a great question. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that?
No, Chair, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else in the chamber? Anybody else online?
Councillor Williams, Chair.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I think again, you've indicated that you're looking through this. I think I should make a couple of points. I think there are a number of things that strike one as potentially having either some baseline figure or some numeric in there. So I'm looking at page 40, increasing the use of assistive technology. You'd expect numbers in a way. This is what we had. This is what we're aiming to get towards. And putting something like assistive tech strategy in place is great, but it's pathway to something else. So I think there's a little bit of the feeding through that would be helpful in terms of measuring and monitoring progress. And I appreciate, Stephen, as you said, the RAG rating will help do this. So I would just suggest that lens applied to some of this, and I'll happily throw a few things in outside of the meeting if that's helpful. Other things are very clearly a kind of system change, and it's actually, we're aiming to do this by this time. So I think it's just trying to look at those things in that way. Just on page 41, I should point out, obviously, that working with each community council, declaring an interest as a member of one of the community councils, and I'm sure many members will have to do that should there be comments, but it's very pleasing to see what's being proposed in relation to that. And I think there was also on page 46, let me find it, apologies, which was something to do with the, where am I now? I can't find it now typically, but there was something that I picked up in terms of the partnership agreement with Bronavon for community and green space. So that, in the context of some of the things that have been mentioned, it's again only a suggestion, and it wouldn't apply to everything, but maybe within the body of some of that narrative, you could perhaps draw out who some of those key partners are. So this is working with Bronavon, this is Leisure Trust. Don't think it's for everything, but I'm just thinking that in terms of helping partners focus on where they are most likely to interact with Torvine could be quite helpful in terms of the overall embedding and ownership of the county plan. Just a suggestion.
The bit you want, David, is we will deliver a 24-25 partnership agreement with Bronavon, ensuring that the sustainable management of ground and green space maintenance to support the needs of the communities in Torvine.
Thank you, Chair.
On page 14 or 46. Happen to have that to hand. Who's going to answer that one?
If I can come back in on a couple of the parts of that, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a really fair challenge around some of the numbers that could be going in there to be able to show change in the adult social care world, and I think we'll reflect on that, and in the version that comes through for final approval, that is something that we're already actively considering around measures. Just on the assistive tech one in particular, this is down as an activity because beyond the Lifeline service, which is a consistent service where we know we've got those numbers coming through, we offer a whole host of assistive technology. But I think there's work for us to do this year in pinning down exactly what change we're looking to achieve through that assistive technology and whether we're achieving that change at scale to be able to give you those numbers that you'd be looking for. So the activity is there for this year so that either later this year or in future years, we have the ability to present you a baseline and a challenge towards it.
Thank you there. Anybody else want to come in on this before we move on?
Well, just to thank Councillor Williams for his comments.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, just to thank Councillor Williams for his comments. And we'd welcome, actually, Councillor, if you've got some particular ideas. We know that your background and expertise can be very helpful in respect to some of the comments that you've made in some of those areas. And we'll take account of the wider points that Councillor Williams made. And again, if there's any suggestions as to how we can improve the communication, communicating the activity within the plan, we'd gladly take that constructively and apply that universally to the whole of the plan, if that's of any help.
I was just... is anybody else on there? I was just going to make a comment about what David did about community councils. I can have to make a declaration as well. Obviously, where that's concerned, that's a considerable amount of work that Dave Leach has done there. I compliment him on that, because there's about 120 community councillors within all that lot. So you've got a considerable body of work you've done there, David. And we're well appreciative of that, because it's exercised the grey cells of a lot of community councillors to actually do that. It's, I suspect, driven a lot of the community councils around here how to work in partnership, especially with the borough, which is actually quite a good piece of work in my opinion. Bearing in mind I might have been a borough councillor for 10 years, I've been a community councillor for considerably longer than that.
Chair, Tom would like to come in as well, please.
Pardon?
Tom would like to come in, please.
Tom?
Yeah, just to say, I think Councillor Williams' point just now about the targets, it relates back to the earlier point around the consistency in how targets and milestones are captured. You know, we do recognise there's some tidying up to do of this document. We talked about it being a framework for accountability, and I think that starts with making sure we're absolutely clear about what we are trying to achieve. So we will look at that throughout the whole of the document before it goes to Council in February.
Thank you for that, Tom. And as what I said about community councillors, they read this document, some of them, so they know what's going on, and it is a focus. It's a focus for a lot of people. And Rose Seaborn's point earlier about how we can use this active document to put it over to people like community councillors and other partners like TVA. David's on that as well. It's an extremely useful document in that respect. And I keep saying to people, go and read it, see where you're involved. And if you look at this part of the document, it's got everybody on it. So I think you congratulate yourself in that respect. You've included people. It's then how we use it, which the bit that Tom's just brought in about the data and the way forward with it. I sort of trying to link that up a bit. I take your point on that. Right. Anybody else wants to come in on it now? There's some meat in there for people to comment on, I reckon. Chamber? David?
Sorry, this is only a final point, really. Just really going to page 57 and the Wellbeing Objective 9. Obviously, with the volunteer programme and the Read to Me service, excellent. But I think, obviously, one would expect there to be the sort of safeguards in terms of people who've got, you know, DBS or whatever if they're working with people. So I think it's just perhaps putting that little bit of wording in to give assurance that there is a training programme or a checking mechanism for that. I know it's implicit probably, but sometimes I think it's useful to spell it out. Second point was then, and again, there's an example here on the fourth point down, where you actually have mentioned a partner. So I think, again, for consistency, it's quite helpful because it then highlights where we're working with others. And finally, it's probably the only bit of jargon I saw, which was LAWRAN at the bottom. I wasn't quite sure what that was. Apologies.
Can we have an explanation, please?
Yes, I'll come back on those again, Chair. If I take LAWRAN first, very fancy bit of terminology. All it stands for is Long Range Wireless Access Network. Long story short, it's an outdoor Wi-Fi system, is the gist of it. So it's a system of sensors that connect up in the outdoor environment. It's a really powerful tool, actually, because then you can attach sensors to that So anything you see that may be something that tells you how many car parking spaces are available, something that tells you the height of a river, most of that these days is run through this system called LoRaWAN. That's the background tech that enables that to happen. And I'm sure if James, our head of IT Digital, is listening, he'll be cringing at my oversimplification of that, but that's the gist of it. Just on that point around the volunteers, you're absolutely right. For programmes where there is a need to put in place safeguarding arrangements, we absolutely will, and we'll build that. We've had conversations with TVA about building that into the training. But I just want to make the one point here that one of the things that we're looking at around volunteer activity, and it's one of the focal points for us this year, is that understanding as to what does need a higher level of safeguarding as opposed to what can just happen day to day without the need for an approval cycle. If we're going to encourage people to volunteer their time, we need to make sure that we're making it as simple as possible. So we've got to get that balance of risk right between those programmes that really are quite high risk with vulnerable people and those that perhaps aren't, where we can allow a greater degree of latitude in terms of those tests that are in place. So I just wanted to make that broader point.
Right, Linda Clarkson.
Yeah, just while we're on the topic of volunteers, and this is something that I always bring up, but it's sustainability when we're relying on volunteers. They come, they go, they commit their time, they're worth their weight in gold. But if we're starting up and relying on volunteers for any services that we deem to be important within our communities, especially looking at it placemaking and on the patch sort of system, that needs to be sort of considered as to, you know, what's plan B if volunteers aren't available at short notice. It's the sustainability side of it.
I think that's me again, Chair. Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, one of the actions that isn't included within the overarching county plan, but I can assure you forms part of our service plan, so that's some of the more detail that would sit underneath some of this, is a project we're doing with TVA. It's essentially us working with TVA to be able to strengthen the sustainability of community groups that we've got. So TVA will look at legacy planning with community groups to encourage their new volunteers to come forward, because one of the things that we quite often see is that community groups will be really, really passionate about delivering on an activity, but once the one or two people who really set that up and championed it either move on or stop being involved in that activity, we see it dropping off. So the focus of our energy is very much going to be on community groups and volunteers within them, as opposed to that wider volunteering sector, because we think that's where the best opportunities for sustainability will come from.
Yeah, it could be some sort of cooperative sort of approach may work in that field, because volunteers tend to be interested in that sort of cooperative way of working rather than so many small units within communities. But it's just an interesting thought, and it's about the sustainability of what we create and keep within our communities. Thanks, Dave.
Chief Exec, please, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just think it's an important question, and I recognise where it's targeted at, Councillor Clarkson, so thank you for that. I think it's also important, though, isn't it, for us to understand that, our agenda really is about helping people to stay well. So this is about the messages that our communities receive in order to promote their own well-being. And of course, when we think about people, we're not necessarily talking here in terms of volunteers, but we're talking here about networks of people around people who live in communities, their friends, their families, their neighbours. So they are volunteering in that capacity, in the sense that they're not paid professionals to be supporting the communities. But we have to be clear about the message, about how we want to encourage people to look after themselves and to build those networks and rely upon, of course, more formal volunteering sector, before, of course, they then come to social care and other sectors to support. That's also an important part of the sustainability conversation, I think, and it's just one that's worth highlighting here, because it's not about social care or a voluntary service. There's also a lot more that communities can do for themselves and with one another.
Well done, God. That's such an interesting area. As what I was going to say, as us involved in public life, a large number of the people on this call, I suspect came from voluntary and community work. And I think what you hit on there is something that's very precious to most members, whatever their persuasion. And I think and probably most officers, it's employment, it's leisure activity, it's a whole lot. So thank you for that. And maybe that's a recommendation we can shove in there somewhere, because I think that's a very good one. I remember my former occupation as a community worker, and some other people have done that as well. So thank you for that. Any more questions and observations before we move on? Stony silence. Once you're stumped.
Chair, can I come in?
Yes, please do, Executive Member.
I was just going to thank members for all their incisive questions, and taking a leaf out of Nigel's book.
Go on.
There's a huge amount of work that goes into this county plan, and there's a team behind it, and the ladies up there, Leanne and Kath, are part of that team. I didn't want the team to be forgotten. We thank the finance officers for all their hard work. I want to make sure that we thank Tom Roberts and his team as well. And the other thing I'd say is, from my perspective, and I've been a councillor, I'm in my second term now, I've seen a marked improvement in the way we monitor performance in this council. And Stephen alluded to it in one of his answers when he said, we're constantly looking at this plan. I think you mentioned 12 weekly, Stephen. We will be bringing forward a biannual report to the council. So this isn't the only opportunity for members to scrutinise what's going on. You'll have the RAG report later in the year. And I just encourage you all to constantly monitor this, because this is what we're going to deliver over the next few years. I mean, okay, it's the annual bit of it, but this is our county plan. This is what we want to achieve. And I'm pretty confident we are going to achieve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And I've resisted temptation to even mention canals, even though it's mentioned in there. So I just said it once. So everybody's finished on this one, have they? I can't see a yellow hand or anything. So we are content. So thank you very much, everybody who contributed. It was quite a lively debate on this subject. And the delivery plan, I think, is dear to everybody's heart. So everybody, officers and Peter, Executive Member, you are free to go, I believe, on this. I'm right on that. Well done, Rachel. Rebecca.
Chair, do you want me to just quickly refresh members on potential recommendations that you've gone through while officers and the exec member are still here?
We're doing that. Okay, yeah. Sorry, we're doing that one again. Yes, please. So they have their contributions. I think it's very good.
Okay,
yes,
so first of all, there was Councillor Seaborn's point about the importance of engaging with the partners, especially the new Leisure Trust Board. And I think within that, Councillor Williams, you could feed in your point about the narrative of drawing out partners where they are contributing towards achieving any of the activities. And then there was also the point about the consistency in targets and milestones. And again, you could make reference to Councillor Thomas's point about making it clearer on the 20 cases within social care. And again, a couple of the points that specific ones that Councillor Williams raised about consistency in timescales or figures. I didn't have anything other than that, unless the members want to. Yeah, Councillor Seaborn.
Yeah, I think, Chair, we picked up on looking at the opportunities for AI.
I also thank you. Yes, we did, certainly. That was a very fruitful bit of debate. I also think the bit about volunteering and the use of that was something that I picked up on, but other people certainly were there before me. So something around that, if you would, please, Rebecca.
So in terms of recommendation, Chair, what would you like to put? Because obviously I think Dave gave a pretty comprehensive response on that. Is there a specific recommendation you'd like to make?
There is, but I have to think how to frame it, all right? It's about the volunteering.
We need to put it forward now, Chair, for the agreement of the committee.
I'm trying to think how to frame that, but there was something more in that because it underpins it. Maybe make an observation rather than a recommendation. All right.
I'll add it in at the commentary at the end. Then.
You're very good at that. It's just the way everybody was in agreement with that. I thought it was rather good.
Yeah, I'll note that in the commentary. Councillor Williams wants to come in.
It was only to suggest that I think the nub of this was where we are looking to work with volunteers, we would need to differentiate if we need to give them support and checks, etc., and be quite clear on that in our narrative. Whereas if we're just looking at volunteers doing what's the word? Yeah, less
non-sensitive.
Less sensitive or risky activity than we've worked with. So something on those lines, I think, Beck, sorry.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Janet Jones.
Hiya. When we talked about the cultural heritage, Dave Leach said that they were working with tourist boards. What involvement have we as local authority got involvement in that, and should they not be working with ward councillors, to highlight the areas that we think should be recognised in attractions for visitors?
Would you like me to come back in there, Chair, just to pick that point up?
Yes,
please,
Dave. You're holding the keys on this one.
Yes, so in terms of the Torvine Tourism Association, what we're actually looking to do here is they have a series of members who form part of that TTA. They're engaging through their membership to look at what those attractions are. There will be engagement with ward members once we get to the point where we see some sort of products coming forward. We're not quite there yet in terms of that. But once we see that, for ward members whose wards form part of where one of those attractions is, we'll either engage directly or pull it together as a seminar. So I'm more than happy to pick that up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Stuart.
Councillor Clarkson.
Linda, yeah.
Yeah, just to maybe expand on the point I was talking about with the volunteers. Yeah. I know TVA have been working on looking at improving volunteers, but the cooperative thought would be about having a volunteer bank and being aware of what volunteers that are providing, which if they were withdrawn suddenly, could push someone into a more of a crisis sort of situation, may only be shopping, something like that, which is something that you might do on a neighbourly level. Is that prevention from people ending up coming towards statutory services again or getting into difficulty? So some sort of understanding and way of, should something be withdrawn suddenly, we're aware of the impact it's going to have on the end users. Does that sort of make sense? That was sort of where I was trying to come from, and whether TVA could sort of manage that with some sort of volunteer bank cooperative sort of setup.
Dave Leach to come into there.
Yeah, actually that last point was the critical one for me, that this is an area where if we were to look at it, it would be working with TVA to establish that. We've worked hard with TVA to establish them as that sort of focal point for volunteering, and I'd be keen that if we were going to put an action forward on this, it would be one that was led by TVA as part of a partnership approach.
Yeah, so conversation to be had.
I wanted to make a point because it's very consistent that volunteers become tomorrow's community leaders and also politicians, and they also become potential workers. There's a lot in volunteers that, if you look at people that we would know, volunteering leads to lots of all sorts of community ownership and action. I don't know what you think about that, Dave, but 30 years in community action, lots of us have all come from places where we started out as volunteers. And I'm wondering what Linda's on about, whether that could be developed.
Thank you, Chair. So I've noted that now as a recommendation. I'm just conscious we'd sort of veer into the territory of scrutinising volunteering.
It wasn't the volunteering. It was the fact it came out of that conversation that in fact TVA is good at that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just reinforces the TVA argument.
Thank you. Councillor Williams would like to come in as well, Chair.
Yeah, I thought he might.
This is simply a point of information, which is that the TVA AGM is set for members' MGM is set for the 1st of March, and in fact the community strategy and the TVA strategy are things that are there for member discussion in work groups, so we can start to see how this can be brought together and aligned. So I hope that provides some reassurance to colleagues.
Thank you, David. I was a former chair of the volunteering forum on TVA years ago, so yes, I would say that as well. Right, thank you for that. Rebecca, can we just get a feel of where we're at? And it seems like we've got a good set of proposals out of that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'll formulate those now and send them round to the committee for your approval before they then get sent back to the exec member and officers. Thank you.
And at fear of prolonging this, has anybody got any burning ones that they've not got? Oh,
yeah,
definitely silent.
Yeah, they've got to recommend.
Nothing further from the chamber, Chair.
Steve?
Because Nigel and Dave think about coming out of retirement.
You're being wicked again. Stop it.
Chair,
right.
so if our officers and the exec members now leave the chamber, and we can just do a brief summary once they've left. Thank you.
That would be. Thank you very much, exec member, and thank you very much, officers. It's been very useful contribution for everybody. Thank you. Right. Is there a lot of milling going on out there? That's good. I can see it. Give me that thumbs up when they've all gone. Good thumbs up. Are we ready now?
Okay, Chair, yes, we're ready to conclude the meeting now. Thank you.
So it's part 1 and part 2 we've got to go through, is it?
Yes, so members have now considered both reports. You've obviously made recommendations at the end of each report, but now is the opportunity. Would any of you like to contribute any further recommendations or comments on either of the reports? I think you've pretty much covered off everything.
So we start with part 1, which is the budget. Anybody on the budget at all?
Nothing further from the chamber, Chair.
And nothing online that I can see. Right, part 2.
Nothing from the chamber again, Chair. Thank you.
And nothing on. So everybody is content.
Okay. Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. You put your thumb up. Brilliant, lovely. I can't hear you. So okay. So thank you very much indeed. That was quite meaningful and useful. I hope everybody's happy with that. So we now look at date and times of next meeting. The next meeting, the Cross-Cutting Resources and Business meeting, will be on Tuesday, 16th of April, where members will scrutinise the workforce strategy. So more of the same. Is that right? So anything you want to say before I conclude the meeting then, Rebecca?
Nothing further, Chair, other than to thank members for your contributions today.
Thank you, Rebecca, and the team in the chamber. They've been doing a magnificent job. They're including our little glitch. That was brilliant. Thank you. Can I thank members and officers for attending and contributing to the meeting? I will now close the meeting. Thank you very much.